Hello and welcome to Autistic Changeling. Today is April. Specifically, it is April 2nd, which a lot of people consider to be Autism Awareness Day, and I really want to talk about that. I knew I was going to have to do this video at some point. So, let's get going. So, Autism Awareness Day and the associated Light It Up Blue movement was created by Autism Speaks and has since become associated with many other autism-related organizations, regardless of whether or not said organizations are directly affiliated with Autism Speaks. The movement still came from them and is still primarily associated with Autism Speaks. And I and many other autistic people have a lot of issues both with Autism Speaks specifically and with this movement in general. So let's start with the movement. Light It Up Blue specifically, first of all, the idea of using blue specifically with this movement came from the misconception that boys are more likely to be autistic. This is not true specifically. But boys are more likely to be diagnosed due to various social pressures and the fact that the stereotype perpetuates itself. Many psychiatrists will not consider autism as much as a diagnosis for girls because they assume it's a boy's thing, so that just kind of perpetuates itself. And there's a variety of reasons, but most girls are misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, not necessarily less likely to be autistic. So that's the first thing, it's just straight up misinformation. But second, and I think more important, is the fact that awareness is not enough. People talk about awareness today and being aware of autistic people, but a lot of this awareness comes from organizations made up of non-autistic people and parents of autistic children, rather than from autistic people ourselves. And when we try to speak and try to share our own voices, a lot of the time, unless we are simply agreeing with and supporting these parents and non-autistics, we get ignored or shut down or spoken over. And awareness can be harmful if it is not accompanied by acceptance. Awareness can be these terrible advertisements that Autism Speaks made a while back, perpetuating stigma against autistic people. I know there was one advertisement where a woman was talking with her child in the room about how the only reason she didn't drive herself and her child off a bridge is because she has a non-autistic child. You know, parents speaking about wanting to kill their autistic children is a form of awareness, and it's a form I don't want. Perpetuating the stigma that autistic people are broken or are missing a piece or aren't fully human, and if that sounds like I am exaggerating, be aware that Autism Speaks, a scientific movement to try to figure out the cause of autism, has the shorthand name missing because they believe that it's a missing piece. And be aware that the creator of applied behavioral analysis therapy, Lovas, said that autistic people aren't really people, that they're just empty vessels that you can fill with whoever you want them to be. And be aware that these are things that people think, that parents who kill their autistic children have news articles written about how hard it must have been for them to live with the autistic child, rather than about how tragic it is that a child was killed simply for the way their brain works. And all of this is awareness. It's just not the right type. Your awareness is not enough. If awareness is talking about autistic people like we're not human, like we're missing pieces, like we're broken, like we're harmful, or like we're burdens, tragedies, if it's talking about us as though you pity us, or about us as though we have to be superhuman to be worthy of basic human respect and dignity, if it's sharing videos of your child having meltdowns without their permission, if it's sharing details about your child's bathroom habits, if it's acting as though we don't have anything to offer the world, or as though we have to have more to offer than anybody else to be worthy of respect, then I don't want your awareness. I don't want it. What I want is acceptance. What I want is for people to, yes, know autistic people exist. Yes, that's why I'm doing educational videos. That's why I've been doing videos talking about various aspects of being autistic, because education and sharing information is important. But I don't want that information to be wrong. I don't want it to be misinformation or stereotypes. I don't want it to be coming from the parents of autistic people. I don't want it to be coming from non-autistics who haven't consulted us at all. I want it to be coming from us. I want it to be coming from autistic people, and I want people to listen to us for a change. And I want acceptance. I want people to realize that we are people, that autistics, including nonverbal autistics, have things to say and can communicate and can speak for ourselves. I want people to accept that the way we are, the way we exist, isn't wrong. We're not broken. We're not missing pieces. We are full human beings with the rights to exist and to be happy that everybody else has. And until people can realize that, your awareness isn't enough. And that's why I do not support Autism Speaks and the Light It Up Blue movement. And I strongly recommend supporting autistic people and educational resources and acceptance movements by autistic people. In particular, I would suggest looking up the Red Instead movement, as well as resources by Amethyst Shaber, who I've mentioned before, and the book Loud Hands, Autistic People Speaking by the Autistic Advocacy Network, which I also recommend. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. And also the Autistic Women's Network is a good resource as well. And there's lots more. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. So that's mostly what I wanted to get off my chest today to share with all of you. Just a few more details about why Autism Speaks is harmful, in addition to the negative stereotyping and incredibly harmful advertisements they've done in the past. The majority of their research, their funding goes towards, the usual things charities pay for, like salaries and advertising. Advertising, like what I've already mentioned. In addition to that, they also primarily fund research aimed at figuring out the cause of autism and looking for a cure. Now, I put this in quotation marks because many autistic people would not want a cure if one was available, and that is an important discussion. I would not want a cure. I am myself. I like who I am. Some things might be harder for me because I'm autistic, but some things are nicer, and regardless of any of that, I like who I am. And if you made me non-autistic, you wouldn't make me into a version of myself that isn't autistic. You would make me into somebody else who is replacing me and living my life, but not having my identity. It wouldn't be me. It would be some imaginary version of me that people might have thought they would prefer. So that's certainly an important thing to be said. But you can't develop a cure. There is no cure. It is simply a fundamental part of how our brains work, which is why so many autistic people oppose a cure. But what this really means is that they don't want a cure, they want eugenics. It is not possible to take an autistic person and then to remove the autism. That isn't going to happen. So what their research is really trying to do is to figure out how to do the same thing to us that people have already done to babies with Down syndrome, which is to discover which children that is going to be and then selectively abort them, and to pressure parents into aborting their children by not providing any resources about autistic people that aren't heavily stigmatizing, which plays back into this whole awareness is not enough element here. When you're trying to figure out how to identify and selectively abort children with a specific trait, that's eugenics. And I cannot support that. I do not support that. I strongly oppose that. So that's one of the major reasons. In addition to the fact that, as far as I know, Autism Speaks continues to support the Judge Rotenberg Center, which is notorious for using electric shocks as a deterrent on autistic people and other disabled people, and has had lots of issues with quality of life for the people living there. There's an excellent piece about it in the Loud Hands book I mentioned. And of course, the fact that Autism Speaks continues to support ABA therapy, which is essentially designed to condition autistic people to suppress autistic traits and to act like neurotypical people, and you can't do that in a healthy way. Autistic people are autistic, and by encouraging autistic people through harmful adversives or through condescending dog treat style methods, all you're doing is encouraging people to suppress traits that aren't harmful so that they fit in better in society, and that isn't going to work. Not least because it's insulting and inappropriate, but also because the traits that they're trying to remove are things that happen for a reason. Autistic people stim for a reason, I've talked about it. Autistic people avoid eye contact often because it's a sensory issue. Autistic people are autistic, and you can't just make us non-autistic because you would like us better if we were. And there's lots of pieces written by autistic people who have had to suffer through ABA therapy and have written about the abuse and the harm they experienced and the negative effect it has had on them. I'm not one of those people, but it is important to be aware of how harmful it can be. So that's what I wanted to say today. Be aware of this and remember that your information about autistic people should come from autistic people, because we're the best source. Thank you. Have a great day.